board for the Rockwall County Historical Foundation. And we would love you to be a member if you're not already, just kind of the house cleaning. We have some great people, and today's our speaker is going to be on part of our series this year is America 250. As you know, we are celebrating 250, so I'm trying to connect things back to Rockwall, but nation's history. And there's a little bit of a nice segue here as we have John Akers, who operates the Eisenhower birthplace and for Sam Rayburn's house historic site. So as you know, Rick Sam Rayburn was, and he's going to be talking about Eisenhower today, but as you know, we have that connection with the Sam Rayburn representing our district. So between the three congressmen that we had, Ray Roberts, Sam Rayburn, and Rockwall, we had only 3 congressmen in 100 years. So kind of neat. We are excited to kick off this new year and with this presentation. And thank you for being here. So with no further ado, please welcome John Akers.
I'm going to set my timer so I don't get carried away, because I can have
You get carried away, that's fine.
That's why I am. So, well, good afternoon. So thank you for having me here. I've actually spoken to this group before 10 years ago, and so I was excited to come back. And I was speaking about Dwight Eisenhower and his connection to America 250 is that he is the first Texas-born president of the United States. So he was our 34th president of the United States, and he was born in Texas. And I'll talk a little bit about that. I manage 2 sites for the Texas Historical Commission. So when you're driving around and you see the highway sign that says historic marker ahead, that is my agency, but we have a division with 44 historic sites around the state. So we've been growing quite a bit in the last 10, 15 years. And so I have the Eisenhower birthplace in Denison, Texas, and the Sam Rayburn house in Bonham, Texas. There is a site in Paris, the Sam Bell Maxey house, and I guess the other closest one, Marshall's not too close, but there's a Star family home. And so we have sites all over the state, and we say our tagline is, we save the real places and tell the real stories of Texas. And you see the name of the Historical Commission up there. There's a little red icon next to it. And can anyone tell me what that's called? What is that object? What does it look like? You said, say it again.
Exclamation point.
Well, I thought someone said it. It's a exclamation point. Because that's what we do. We save the real places, tell the real stories of Texas. And the story here is that's just our image for the Eisenhower birthplace. He was born in a house by the railroad tracks in Denison in 1890. And he's in uniform because we started by preserving the house of a general. That he became president was a bonus. And here's our entrance. So Dwight Eisenhower, so we're at the Eisenhower birthplace in Denison, Texas. And this is the house. How many of you visited? Anybody been there? So this year is our 80th birthday. So his first visit, I'm talking about the site, the Eisenhower birthplace site. So I'm going to show you a picture of it. But General Eisenhower made his first adult visit back to Denison on April 20th, 1946. Wow, so our 80th birthday is this April. So the house has been a museum for 80 years, and the picture on the right is what it looks like now. We just put a new roof on it, so it hasn't faded out yet, the shingles, and we did some restoration work on the front porch, but that's how it looks like, and so we're excited. We have the house. And we're about to get ready to do some new site improvements, new entrance, some new exciting stuff. So you have to come and check us out. And so, you know, we're not that far away from you. We're also in the 4th Congressional District. So Denison gets started in 1872. It's the rail connection point for the first railroad into Texas from the north, first connecting to other places, the Missouri, Kansas, and Texas. You know it as the Katy. And the Katy founded Denison, and it became a boom town. And so the railroad was a big part of Denison. So that's one of the old depots in Denison. Denison within 6 months had 3,000 people in it in 6 months. That's not a frontier town, that's a boom town. And it was a railroad connection. It connected, other railroads came up from the south, and it became what I call a happening place. By 1890, it had 11,000 people. It was the 9th largest city in the state, and it attracted many people looking for opportunity, and that included his parents. And so it's kind of a badly colorized photo, but that is our story. There's many sites connected to Dwight Eisenhower, we call them legacy sites. But we talk about his early life, his beginnings in Texas, and then how average people felt about him. So those are the parents. That's David and Ida Stover Eisenhower. Don't they look happy? That's their wedding picture. It's a badly colorized photo. They got married in 1885. He got money or land from his father, and he tried to run a general store in Hope, Kansas. And I joke around and say he had a midlife crisis at the age of 26 and decided that's not what he wanted to do with his life. He quit his job, and the biography that Eisenhower wrote, he said, well, somebody ran off with the cash from the business, and that's why the business failed. That's not true. He bought his business partner out. I think he just didn't like what was going on, like what his life was like. And he decided, I want to be a mechanic, I want to be an engineer in the railroad, so he quit his job. They have a son. Ida is pregnant with her second son, Edgar. This guy needs a job. And so he ends up in Denison, Texas in 1888 to take a job on the railroad in the roundhouse. He was an engine wiper. That meant his job, this is a picture of the nice big train I just had. His job was to put the grease and lubricate the gears on the train. It was the first step in becoming an engineer, the rock stars of the railroad world. And so the house he ended up moving in is very close to this structure. You drive into Denison, you go over a bridge by a football stadium, and that's goes right over the top where this thing was. So he came here looking for economic opportunity. And if you're in Denison, I just show you, does Rockwall have a bird's eye view map? Got an old map showing all the stuff going on in the 1880s, 1990s? Yep, sure, okay. So Denison has several of them, so this shows you it was a boom town, and this map, which I know you can't see closely, has 5-story buildings on it. So I'd say it's a happening place, because people go and say, what brought the family to this place? And the neighborhood is very close. In the upper one, the black and white, you can see the red circle for the neighborhood. The house is actually drawn in this picture. And then you can see the roundhouse off to the right, so you can see how close it was. And that's where they lived. They rented the house. This is the house. See how close it was, close to railroad tracks. I often joke around, if you come and get a tour from me, and I say, you know, some of his biographers all say the same thing. Like Stephen Ambrose, who wrote Band of Brothers, he worked on Eisenhower's papers, but I pick on him a little bit, because he says, in his book, Dwight Eisenhower was born in a shack by the railroad tracks. It's not a shack. Tells me two things. One, the house, Stephen Ambrose never visited. Two, the house was built before the railroad came through. It's meant to be a nice house with Texas climate, Texas air conditioning, lots of windows. But it was built the year after it was built, the railroad came through 35 feet away from it. So the rails are gone. The railroad was removed in 1990, but we still have the rails, and we're going to rebuild some track next to it. So they rented the house, couldn't afford to bring all their stuff from Kansas. Lived there for 3 years, lived in Texas for 3 years, and we tell part of that story. And some people say, well, how do you know he was really born there? Some people say he was born in Bug Tussle, Texas. You know where Bug Tussle is? Well, this is my proof, because here's the city directory, and this is the 1891, and the circle says, in the directory, Eisenhower, David J. Wiper, MKT Shops. Residence, northeast corner, South Lamar Avenue and Day Street. That's the address of the house today. Some people say, oh, they moved it. And so we didn't move it. In the 50s, we moved the neighborhood, but we left the house where it was. So you can take that to the bank. He was born in that house, and actually, his mother, when word gets out he's from here, his mother eventually writes with the aid of the youngest son, and we have a letter that she says, you know, yes, the woman you knew, just the person who wrote, the woman you knew across the street was my mother, Ida, and she says Dwight was born in that house in 1890. And here's the family. So Dwight is on the far left of the photo, and there were 6 boys that lived to adulthood, and I was asked to talk about Texas connections. And they lived in Texas for about 3 years, and some people come and say to us, well, he had no memories of it. What's the deal, the big deal of preserving this house? And in a minute I'll talk about how it was a big deal to the people in North Texas when they found out that General Eisenhower was from there. But there's Dad, there's Mom. They eventually moved back to Kansas. Dad works all kinds of different jobs to provide for the family. Edgar, the second oldest, he's the boy on the back row, the second on the back row, says, growing up, I didn't know we were considered poor, but the family really helped them develop. And I think it's really interesting that all 6 of those boys graduate from high school. 5 of the 6 go to college. The one that didn't becomes a pharmacist. And I always ask people, I say, so who do you think lit a fire under these guys to get an education and focus on their career? I think it's Mom, right? Ida. And I think it's the whole story about being taken to Texas and going back, and Dad quitting a job, and they didn't finish their education. And you can imagine her saying, don't do what your dad did. Get your job, get your education and get your job. And that's an experience that came from their time in Texas. And all those guys were successful. So Dwight wants to have an education because Mom is really probably pushing this. But they're poor. So he's working outside of high school to put a brother through college when a friend tells him about the service academies. The U.S. Military Academy, the Naval Academy. If you get in there, the government will pay for your education. Great, I'm going to go to Annapolis, he thought. And he applied, he wrote his senator in Kansas, and by the time he went through the examination, he could only get an appointment to West Point. Who's the other big World War II guy from Texas in a different branch? But also think of the Navy, Chester Nimitz from Fredericksburg. Chester Nimitz wanted to go to West Point. So that's why these 2 top 5-star officers in Texas they wanted to go somewhere else, but were successful. So he gets in, he goes to West Point, graduates in 1915. Later on, they say he was part of the class the stars fell on, because 66 members of that class all became generals. And so some people say, well, he doesn't remember Texas, and what Texas connections are there? Well, his first military posting outside of when he graduates from West Point is at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio. That's where he went the first time. And that was really fortuitous for him because he met a young woman named Mamie Dowd, whose family would vacation in San Antonio in the winter, and they met in San Antonio, and they get married a couple years later. So there's their wedding picture where he's in uniform. And so he meets his wife in Texas. And maybe makes several trips here with him as well. Great stories about that. He has his career in World War I starts. And we enter in 1917. And he's still down at Fort Sam Houston. He never got overseas to fight in the war. For one thing, he was too good at training troops. And so he actually trained lots of troops outside in South Texas. Said he was really good at it. Later on, they said, okay, we've got to let him do something else. And he goes to Pennsylvania, and he starts to set up early tank, the Army's tank program with some guy named George Patton at a place called Camp Colt in Pennsylvania, which is actually next to the Gettysburg battlefield. So he was involved with tanks. He was going to take his group over to Europe. He was supposed to ship out on November 11th, 1918, or 1917. Well, basically, he got the day of the armistice. So he was unable to go overseas. He took this very personally. He said, I'll never get promoted now. By gosh, I'm going to cut such a swath for me now going forward. So he didn't serve in World War I, and that was a knock on some of the other European officers. He never served in the war. So this really motivated him, but he got to start World War I in Texas. And he had kind of a real interesting career. Now he said in 1940, he said, 1939, if I could just make colonel by the time I retire, I had a pretty good career. And so he served in the he served in the Panama Canal Zone under a guy named General Fox Connor, who was a big guy in World War I and became his mentor. He had to give Navy a payback, so he decided to work for the Battle Monuments Commission in Europe, documenting World War I battlefields. So Navy got to be in Paris, and people said, what are you doing in your career? Documenting battlefields in Europe is never going to help you in your career. Right, what is he doing? Okay, I'll get to that part of the story. He's under Douglas MacArthur in the Philippines, and we go to war, and December 7th, 1941, the Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor, and he's back as commanding officer at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio. Chief of Staff George Marshall gets on the phone and says, get yourself to Washington. He probably used different words, but he said, get yourself to Washington, D.C., and he took the train from San Antonio up to St. Louis and over to Washington, D.C. And in those days, the main line from Dallas up to the border, the Katy, went through Dallas and took this route that went on the tracks in front of his birthplace. He probably rode a train in front of his birthplace, not knowing that was the place he was born. That's pretty cool. George Marshall's the other guy in the picture on the left. And George Marshall comes to attention of him. He knows he needs to update the military, puts Eisenhower's name in the book, and he sends him to Washington, eventually has him assess what's going on in Europe, and says, do you believe in these recommendations? Well, good, you're in charge of it. You're going to command American troops over there. And that's the point he gets out, the word gets out he's from Texas. So he's in charge of all the European theater. And what's the big battle he commanded?
D-Day.
D-Day, so 80 years ago, last year. So the largest amphibious invasion in world history. So we're familiar with that, and the thing you see on the right is this order of the day, inspiring troops. And he was, I love this title, Supreme Commander of Allied Forces. And he was part of SHAEF, Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force. And he had this patch on his shoulder of a sword in darkness with a rainbow of all the Allied colors on the top wing of Liberate Europe. And they were successful, but you're familiar with that picture of the paratroopers, where he's got his hand up and he's talking to the paratroopers the night before they go into the invasion. And that whole decision to launch the invasion was on him, no pressure. He would go out knowing his part of the job was done. I think there's a movie coming out. Did it come out about, he based the Normandy invasion on a weather report. The weather was our secret weapon. Because the Germans thought, oh, there's a storm. There's no way they're going to launch an invasion now. Well, there was a break coming in the weather, and the Allies knew this. And he said, we go. But he had a letter in his pocket, ready. It's called In Case of Failure, that he was ready to take responsibility if the invasion failed. So that's leadership, right? So the invasion's successful, and word gets out. He's from this little house. He was born in this house in Denison, Texas. This starts in 1942. Newspapers say he's from Texas. Where? And you can see in this picture, there's actually a neighborhood there with it. Streets are not paved. There's houses around it. And there's people that remember the family living in Texas. This is a school teacher. Her name is Jenny Jackson. She lived across the street from Eisenhower family in the 1890s. So she's the one who went across the street and said she held baby Eisenhower. So the picture in the middle, she's the one on the left. And there's that letter that Milton, the youngest son, wrote back. It's true my brother Dwight was born in Denison, Texas, and that was from his mom. He wrote it for his mother, so that's our other support. Mom says, right? Mom should know. And J.D. Jackson leads an effort for Denison and North Texas. There are many communities throughout the area to purchase a house. They raised $3,000 during wartime, right? Rationing. You're limited to gasoline and sugar. Young men are serving in the military, and they thought it was important to buy this house. And they get it, and they invite him to come to his first visit. So here's your Texas history quiz. How many people can you name in that photo? I know, right? Did you see him over General Eisenhower's shoulder? There's kind of a joke, and you see like you see Johnson, he's always like in the back somehow getting, photobombing the photo, as my daughter would say, trying to get in there. Okay, so we have General Eisenhower, we have Lyndon B. Johnson when he was a representative. Who's to the general's left? Sam Rayburn. So the guy in the hat. So Mr. Sam, there was your representative as well as mine, right? Sam Rayburn. District 4 in Texas. Served 17 years as Speaker of the House. It's a record. No one's come close to reaching it again, and he's from Bonham. This is a big deal. Everybody wanted to be around Eisenhower. And so they flew in. These are all congressmen from Texas and Oklahoma. They fly into the local airfield. And it was Eisenhower Day. He's a rock star. And they go and have breakfast in the house he was born in. They called it the Big Texas Breakfast. Called sweet ham and lots of bread and all kinds of good stuff. They cooked it in the house. Do you see the woman on the far right of the photo? That is Miss Ginny Jackson. That's a school teacher that held him as a baby. So this was a big deal. There were 30,000 people that came in town to see him, come and see him. So first of 3 visits. So he did not consider himself a Texan, but he was very gracious to Texas and made many visits here. And the house was open as a museum. You saw the flash of it. He runs at the last minute, decides to jump into the 1952 election as a Republican. Both parties were courting him. And when he runs for office, he's invited back to Texas. And these are the Gold Star mothers. These are women, the local chapter. These are women who lost a child in the war. And they invite him to come through Texas. He said, it's not a campaign stop, it's a gesture. I just want to honor them. And he parades through Texas. This is June 1952, going through downtown Denison, Texas. In all these situations, he would come down to Dallas or Fort Worth for campaign spots. And he gets elected, ends the Korean War, gives us the interstate highway system. He makes several visits back here, so a lot of real big impacts. He really unleashes the economy. So we talk about the prosperity of the 1950s. One of his more controversial things is segregation of Little Rock, Arkansas in 1957. At the same time, a foundation buys the house that he was born in. Guys funded by some top Republicans in Texas. Sid Richardson, oil guy. Aiden Carter ran a newspaper in Fort Worth. They get the house, the town gives them the house because they get overwhelmed with visitors. And they put a lot of money, they buy the block, they make a park, because president needs a park. And they restore the house and they give it to the state of Texas, which takes it in 1958. So this is a little controversial, so it took another year to get the house. Eisenhower makes his last visit in 1965. He's out of office. Sometimes he would send his brother Earl, one of his younger brothers, to come to Texas for him if he couldn't make it. And he comes again in 1965. It's now part of the state, Texas Parks and Wildlife. He has it by then. And every time he comes to Texas, he has a big parade. So he made 3 different visits. If you visit us today, we have this really cool statue of him. Anybody remember it? It was dedicated in 1973. His granddaughter-in-law, Julie Nixon Eisenhower, and married his grandson David, came and did the dedication. And I always point this out on my tours that look, what's he wearing? Is he a president? No, he's a general. And the military guys are saying, where's this cover? That's a great question. It's one of 5 statues this West Point graduate did that's in different places of the United States, around the world. And he later on told us, well, heads are hard. So the other statues he did, it has his cover, his uniform on. And we talk about, may young people be inspired by the greatness of our most distinguished son, Dwight Eisenhower. So we tell the kids in North Texas, do you know somebody in your backyard who became president of the United States, born in a house without running water or electricity? talking about North Texas and how significant the area was, I love that photo I showed you of Eisenhower, Johnson, and Rayburn. Because in the 1950s, these were some of the most powerful guys in our government, right? Sam Rayburn was Speaker of the House for 6 of Eisenhower's 8 years as president. And after 1948, Johnson gets elected to the Senate. A few years later, he's what? He's Senate Majority Leader. And in 1960, he becomes John F. Kennedy's running mate. And Sam Rayburn was really excited about Kennedy and the Democrats being back in control. And so but Sam Rayburn dies in November of 1961 from pancreatic cancer. And they have his funeral in Bonham, and this is a picture of the funeral. Take a look there. We got 2 past, 1 current, and 1 future president sitting in the front pew of the First Baptist Church in Bonham, Texas. Today they have a social hall, and they took the pew out, and it's in the church. It's in the hall next to it with this picture. So I show this to you to say, wow, North Texas really did have a lot of political clout. So great photo. So yeah, you have Harry Truman and Dwight Eisenhower. They didn't get along for a bit. There's a whole lot of other stories there. Lyndon Johnson and John F. Kennedy driving to Bonham, Texas. Can you imagine that? Landing in Denison and going to Texas. Another connection, because really I'm almost out of my slides. This is a mural that we have in Denison. You'll see it when you drive in. And again, he's in a uniform, and leadership by Dwight Eisenhower. Very proud of him. Do you know that when he came back to North Texas and Denison in 1965, do you know what his title was? Do you know how you would address him? In 1960, he asked, petitioned Congress to give back his general's rank. He thought being a 5-star general was a lot important than being a president. There were fewer 5-star generals than presidents in those days. So he was General Eisenhower. That was very important to him, so leadership. So I was asked to talk about Texas connections, and I got kind of a fun one that's not as significant, but he wrote a biography. It's called At Ease, Stories I Call My Friend. Stories I Tell My Friend. And he liked to cook. General Eisenhower liked to cook. We actually have a book we sell called Ike the Cook. And he said he realized that his mom taught all the boys to be independent, so he learned to cook from his mother. And in the book, he talks about how he was entrepreneurial, trying to make money. And in the book, he says, my mother learned how to make tamales in Texas. Well, where's that? That's right in Denison, right? Hey, his older brothers talk about waiting on the porch for the tamale peddler to come through. And we're thinking, can't be too many of them, right? Look at the city directory, there were like 6 tamale peddlers. And the one that lived closest to us was a guy named O'Brien. But he probably had a Tejano wife. So he says he made tamales thanks to Texas, so he liked to cook. Okay, that's a serious one. I give you a quick overview. He had many Texas connections. Tamales, met his wife. He was posted here several times. It's very important to him. He was the first Republican to win Texas when it was solidly Democratic. That's very important. Sometimes people point out, though, that he did not win Denison in 1952. Any guesses why he did not? Did he win Rockwall in 1952? Because Mr. Sam was more popular. So that was Mr. Sam's district, so he didn't win some of the places, but he won enough places throughout the rest of the state, so I think that's really interesting. On the back table, I left you some flyers for both my sites. The Eisenhower Birthplace, which has our correct hours, we're open Wednesday to Sunday. And then we have the Sam Rayburn House hours. We have his Cadillac. You can pick these up on the back table. That's really neat. So we have this Cadillac. Sam Rayburn was about self-sufficiency farming. He thought people should be able to provide for themselves. But when he was when he was in office, he wanted to help farmers. I want to get my people out of the mud and into the light. So he signed legislation creating Denison Dam, right? And it had some electrical generation. He electrified his own house at great expense, and he thought, all farmers should have access to this electricity. So rural electrification, farm to market roads, things he did to help. So anyway, you can pick those up, and I got a visitor's guide with more information. If you're really ambitious, tomorrow we have a President's Day program. You know, you get like the hobbies of the president. So what's Dwight Eisenhower's hobbies? Golf. You can golf, painting. We have all that going on. So I understand that's kind of a circuitous story. I was trying to keep to my 30 minutes. But I bet if you ask me some really hard questions, I'll do my best. I bet I can give you some good answers. Real answers too, honest answers. Yes, sir.
I've been driving by that birthplace since I was a kid, and I really appreciate the information you passed on about it. My question is, we as a group of historical foundation try to preserve stuff. We have houses too. How do y'all fund all of that up there? Is it strictly through membership, or is it a membership, or is it through monetary donations?
So it's complicated. No, we are a state since 1958. We've been part of the state of Texas. So it became a state of Texas historic site. In 2008, the legislature moved our property and other historic sites, not all of them, from Texas Parks and Wildlife to the Texas Historical Commission. So my salary, my staff salary is paid by an appropriation for the Texas Historical Commission, from the legislature every year. However, we had to do a fundraising campaign for some. I mentioned we have this funding to be able to do a series of improvements for the site, and so we had a fundraising campaign, raised about $300,000 locally. My timing wasn't good because we started during COVID. Yeah, that's my dad. And then we were able to get an appropriation out of the legislature 2 cycles ago. The THC has been expanding. There's 44 sites, so every year it seems the legislature adds some sites. But something that we're about to start, which is my agency, is an affiliates program. I don't have the details, but they're trying to find a way to make more grants available to local history places, because we realize we can't have everything as a historic site, so how can we help these sites? So I would say stay tuned, because they're going to roll out some new programs. Affiliates that might involve some funding.
So you can tour the house?
You can. We're
Like a museum then?
so it is. So it's a funky animal, as I say. There's 2 blocks of what was the neighborhood, the working class neighborhood, and we have our current visitor center is a house built in the 1890s. We have an old general store, which is our education center. There's no charge to go on the grounds. You can walk around the grounds. So even I said that we're open Wednesday to Sunday. People drive there on a Tuesday. If you go during the daylight, you can walk around. To go in the house, you have to come Wednesday through Sunday. There's an admission charge to get into the house. No charge if you just want to peek in the windows. The good thing, if you buy an admission, you have a week, and you can take your receipt to the Sam Rayburn house and get a tour there without any additional charge. So these 2 guys, Rayburn was Eisenhower's host in 1946. These 2 guys served together. We thought it made sense. We operate them together. 2 sites with 1 staff, and I have the staff that works on both of them. That's probably more information than you wanted. That's what I do. What else? Give me some hard questions. Not too hard. Just kidding.
What year did you say that the birthplace, the house, was acquired and set up as a museum?
So the town buys it in January of 1946. They paid $3,000 for it that they raised. The town, and we're talking town, Chamber of Commerce, those groups of surrounding communities, they get it ready by April of 1946. So I say April 1946 is our birthday. After he leaves, they had volunteer groups open it. So I showed you the Gold Star Mothers. Like Sunday afternoons, they would give tours of it in the late 40s and early 50s. And when he became president, that's when the town realized they had a problem because people wanted to go in it and they didn't have the resources to have it open all the time. And that's when the town, so we did a foundation, and that's when Sid Richardson and Aaron Carter came in. They did a restoration in 55, they opened it up in 57, and they gave it to the state of Texas a year later.
My parents took me from Rockwall to Denison when it was pretty new to tour the grounds and the house. And maybe 56, 57, Ike was still president, and a very popular one in this part of the country from that standpoint. But
So he was very popular when it opened, so yes. And they did, your other question was, it was really an Eisenhower museum early on. They had the Gold Star mothers, they would put pictures of the Eisenhower family, they had scrapbooks about the war. And for many years we have a painting painted, we had it in there. About 2000 we changed it to a historic house, and we have a visitor center with it that has that memorabilia from him.
my grandmother was a Gold Star mother here in Rockwall. One of her sons got his name on a plaque on this building, and she was involved in that stuff.
Yeah, the Gold Star, yes, I mean, there were chapters all over the state, and they were very involved. The state president was very involved with that. Thank you for sharing that. That's an incredible connection to that site. Other questions? Well, you have a brochure. Yes, yes.
Was he I know Camp David is named after his grandson. Was he the first president that went there?
So it's true. A few years ago, the George W. Bush Library Museum, they had an exhibit on like parks, and they had that sign. This is Camp David. There's a picture of his grandson, like hey, over the sign. That was actually started by President Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, and it was called, he called it Shangri-La. And Eisenhower renamed it. Yeah, it's a presidential retreat. And it was a place that would take other foreign leaders to negotiate. But yeah, he named it after his grandson, David. So he had 4 grandchildren, 3 granddaughters, David. 3 of the 4 grandchildren are still alive. The youngest granddaughter, Mary Jean Eisenhower, actually visits us several times and has helped us, so they're still involved in the legacy. But yes, there's a neat connection there. And David did come to the Eisenhower birthplace once. Well, I hope, I got many stories, so I hope you can come up and visit us. It is a good America 250 year, and our historic sites, we have things going on all around the state. And you can pick up one of those brochures to get our main web address and learn more about it. So thank you for my second time coming back and talking to your group. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.